section of math and merchandising is going to be cash discounts. So looking at cash discount, first thing we're going to look at is a purchasing cycle. So what we're looking at the purchase cycle is, first of all, we're going to select a vendor. We're going to decide, remember we're a retailer, we're going to decide where we're going to get our products from. We might go through and take a look at the best trade discounts we can get. We might calculate some things and figure out where we can get the same product that we can for the least amount of money. Second thing we're going to do is we're going to place an order. We're going to call up a vendor and place an order. We're going to go onto their website, or we may even have an automated way of doing it. But my company is saying, I want to get this much of this product, and please send it to me. The company is going to fill that order, so the order is going to get fulfilled, and part of that is they're going to create an invoice. The invoice is going to get packaged with all the product. It's going to get sent to us, or the customer. We're going to receive the order and get the invoice. Then at some other point in time, here we have our product. We're going to take our invoice and we're going to submit cash from us to the other vendor, and that cycle will be complete. So what we want to do is, well, if we're the other vendor, we want to encourage that debt to be paid quickly. So some reasons for it. If a retailer may have cash flow problems, if I get my cash before somebody else, I'm losing that risk. Also, if I have that money in my hand, I can then use that to build more product. So I want to encourage prompt payment. So when we look at an invoice, first of all, we're going to have three areas. So here we have the date that the invoice is created. This was the date that that order was filled. The company may not have received the product yet, but it's the date it was filled, and we're going to send the invoice out. We may offer a discount. So from this first area, from the date the invoice is, so for perhaps 10 days, sometimes longer, sometimes shorter, we're going to get a discount. If the retailer pays for the product in that short amount of time, we'll give them a discount. From that day until some due date, just like your Visa, if you pay your Visa late, there's a penalty if you pay it right on time. So we're looking at that time just for the due date. Everything is good. And past the due date, we have an overdue invoice where we might have to pay something for it. So three periods. First, I have a discount period. Payments made in that period get a cash discount. So we'll do an example, but if I have an invoice in the first 10 days, if I pay the vendor money in those first 10 days, they're going to give me a cash discount. They're going to say, you paid the invoice, we'll give you some money off. Then we have a credit period. This is from after we're not getting a discount anymore up until the time when the invoice is due. That's a credit period. And anything past that, the invoice is overdue and we may have to pay a penalty. So might have to pay penalties, might have to pay interest, there might be a one-time charge. So how do these look? Well, we have an example that says 210 net 30 days. So we have some portion of this where we have a percentage discount, in this case 2%, and a duration that's valid for. So 10 days after the invoice date is the date that's valid for. So the duration of this period would be 10 days. The second part of this is the net is due in 30 days. The entire invoice, any leftover amount, or the entire invoice as a whole, is due in 30 days. So this credit period here, this would be 20 days long. All right. And at that point, we're going to stop for right now saying this is our line in the sand where we say everything is going to be due there, everything's going to be paid. So how are we this? 210 net 30 days. It's a 2% discount if paid in the first 10 days. In the first 10 days, you're going to get a discount. After that, for the remaining 20 days, you get no discount, but the invoice still has to be paid. We also may have more terms than that. We may say, we might have something which is 4% in the first 10 days, so 410, 1% in the first 20 days. So after the 10 days, we now have 10 more days of a 1% discount. And then the net is due in 30 days. So we can have 3 terms, 4 terms, 5 terms. Usually we're only going to see 1. Okay. So maybe multiple terms. Dates use ordinary dating. So we're not going to concern ourselves with, was it at the beginning of the day or was it the end of the day? We just say something like, well, we had an invoice on June 7th, and it's 2/10 net 30 days, so we're just going to add 10 June 17th. We don't worry about whether the invoice is in the morning or the end. We're going to use something called ordinary dating, which says we count the first day, but we don't count the last day. So this allows us to use simple math, and it's fair for when we're getting things to the time of day. So the discount is calculated just as we did for trade discounts. N equals L, 1 minus D. In this case, N, this is the invoice amount during the discount period. So when we get money off, it's N, because N was always smaller than L. L is the invoice amount at the due date. This is the amount that's published on the invoice, the amount that has to be paid. And D is the discount rate that we're experiencing, like the 210. So how does this look? Well, we receive an invoice for $582.34, dated January 8th. And the terms on it are 210 net 30 days. So if we pay it in the first 10 days, we get a 2% discount. Otherwise, it's due in 30 days. So we're going to ask, what amount must be paid on January 18th to settle the invoice? So for all these problems, I like to do a diagram first. Diagram says, well, here we are. On January 8th, we got an invoice. And for some portion of time, we have a discount period. And we can read that discount was 2% for 10 days. Well, January 8th plus 10 is January 18th. So any time from the 8th to the 18th, if it's paid in there, we're going to get a 2% discount. And then I finish this off and say, well, in the end, it's net 30 days. Well, it's actually not January anymore. 30 days after January 8th, that's January 38th. There is no 31 days. So we subtract off how many days in January? 31. So this is February 7th. So we get a discount. Here we have a credit period. And on February 7th, this is the due date. We have to pay this invoice before February 7th. Why is this called a credit period? Well, at this point, we're not giving a discount anymore, but we haven't paid for things, but we've already got product. So the vendor is actually giving us credit, saying, we trust you, we expect that you're going to pay it on February 7th. We're not going to charge you any interest, but we're extending you credit. So that's a credit period. So now our calculation. What we're going to do, well, we have N equals L, 1 minus D. Okay. Again, L is the list price. It's the large price. It's the amount that is going to be on the invoice. And D is the discount. Well, we're right here in the first 10 days. We're actually right on the border of that 10 days. This is where the payment is. Take our invoice plus 10, January 18th. If we pay any time in January 18th, we get that cash discount. If we paid it on the 19th, we get no discount, and we'd have to pay the full amount, $582.34. But because we're 1 day earlier, we're at the end of the discount period, we can say our net price is $582.34 times 1 minus 0.02. Remember the 0 when it's only 2%. Okay, so that's 582.34 times 0.98. Okay, I'll go to my calculator. $582.34 times 0.98. That's $570.6932. I always carry a couple of extra decimals until I write my English statement and say the amount to be paid on January 18th is $570.69 to fully pay the $582.34 invoice. So what we notice here is we owe $582.34, but we only have to pay $570.69. Seems like a good deal. We got to pay a lower amount because we're going to get a 2% discount. Just like our trade discounts, if it's cost 2% less, if this was our list price and that was our net price, we get 2% off. Because we're paying our invoice early, we get 2% off. It's encouragement for us to pay our invoice early, and then the company gets their money. They don't have to worry about our account. Sometimes, though, we don't have enough money to pay the whole thing. So we have a partial discount. We cannot pay the whole invoice during the discount period. We can also make a partial payment, which says, yes, I know I owe $583, but in this case, or we won't have a case yet, but I don't have $580, I might give you $300, and then we'll pay more later. So partial payments, what we do is we calculate the amount of the invoice that we would pay during the credit period. So for partial payments, L is the amount that we're going to credit to the invoice, that we're going to say this is how much it should be. N is the amount of the partial payment, the actual amount that we paid. Just like back here, N was the actual amount that we paid, the $570. And D is the discount rate, same as we've had before. So do a problem. So the same $582.34 invoice, we're going to pay on the 18th, but we don't have all the money. We only have $200. Well, again, I'm still going to do my diagram. Okay, January 8th, January 18th, and February 7th. Okay, here we have the discount period, 2%, and here we have a credit period, and we'll just call this 0%. Okay. So what we get on this is we say, well, we can't just say subtract off $200 because we have a discount. And we can't say calculate what the discount would be on all of that because we don't get a discount on all of it. We only get a discount on a portion of our payment. And we can't calculate 2% of 200 because that's not where we're calculating. That's not the value that we get. So instead of taking any shortcuts, let's just use the formula again. And here we say N is equal to L, 1 minus D. And we know D, and we know N because N is the amount that we're paying. And we're not paying off the whole invoice. So now we're going to manipulate this equation, and we're going to solve for L. And say L, right? L is equal to N over 1 minus D. So we're going to divide both sides by 1 minus D. We get N, L is equal to N times 1 minus D. Or N over, L is equal to N over 1 minus D. Okay. So now putting the values in, we say, well, the list price, the amount that we get credited for paying $200 is going to be our $200 payment over 1 minus 0.02, because that's how much cash discount we were. Because again, we're still right on the edge of that discount period. So this is equal to $200 over 0.98. Okay. And we take a look and say 200 times 0.98. This is 196. Sorry, that's not. It is $204.082. Okay. Notice this isn't the same of saying 200 times 0.02, which would be $4. It's dividing by 0.98. So what we're saying is, if we paid if we had an invoice of $204.08, $200 would cover it. But we don't have an invoice for $204, so what we say is, we had an invoice for $582, we're crediting this amount, so we have $582.34 minus the $204.08. Okay. So we have 582.34 minus 204.08, $378.26. Okay. So the outstanding amount, is $378.26. So let's take a look at what we did. We said we have, in this period, $378.26 left to pay. So sometime before February 7th, we still have to pay $378.26. And we've paid $200. So plus $200 is $578.26, which isn't the whole amount of the invoice. This is how much we're going to end up paying because the rest of the credit period at no discount. But the rest that's left here is $4.08. Then when we add that up, we get the $582.34. Okay? So we don't get a $4 discount because we're not calculating that other way. We're just going to follow the formula. We get $4.08 discount, get the right amount at the end. Okay. So with a partial payment, use the formula again, but in this case, we're going to calculate L. And L is the value of a payment that goes to the invoice. In this case, $204.08 goes to the invoice, and then we can calculate any difference, the original value of the invoice minus the relative value of the payment with our cash discount to get an outstanding balance. Okay. Second thing we have is multiple invoices. And sometimes we will have, within a month, we may buy 3 or 4 times from one vendor. So perhaps every Monday we get a delivery from a vendor, and we get an invoice every Monday. Well, if we have terms that are 210 net 30 days, we'll have an invoice that we get on Monday. We're not going to have to pay it until the following Thursday, but we've got another invoice in. So we're always looping 2 or 3 invoices. So the rules are, if we have multiple invoices from the same vendor, it's important that they're from the same vendor because other vendors don't care if you have a discount with somebody else. So the same vendor must be paid in the order they are written. So the date, the oldest date first. Oldest must be paid in full first. Okay. So you can't get a cash discount from a vendor where there's an outstanding invoice aged to the credit period. Okay? So you can't get a discount when there's another invoice sitting on the table where you're not getting a discount. So how that looks. Well, we're going to have two invoices here. So we receive an invoice for $1,267.29 on November 17th, and another one for $841.74 on November 26th, both at the same terms, 3, 10, 30 days. What's the outstanding amount after a $1,500 payment on December 6th? Well, again, we'll do our timeline. So the first thing that happened was on November 17th. And we go into the future. We know that it's 3% for 10 days. So 17th, the 27th would be another invoice. But what happens next is we actually get another invoice here on the 26th. So November 26th, we get a second invoice. Our third date here is November 27th, which is the end of this period. So let me draw this slightly different. Here's the invoice, 17th, the 27th, and December 17th. We have a second invoice which we received on November 26th, which is going to have a discount period until 10 days later, November 26th. That would be 30 days in November, so December 6th. And the end of the credit period would be December 26th. Okay. So what we're going to look at is on December 6th, we have a payment. And what we're going to do is we're going to pay $1,500. And what we'd like to do is get the discount. But what's happening? What's happening is when we make this payment, $1,500 has to go to the oldest first. So when we make this payment, we're getting 0% here in this credit period because we're looking at we have to pay the first one first. And this has a balance or an outstanding balance of $1,267 because we didn't apply the credit period. So we have this invoice, $1,267.29. That comes out of our $1,500 first. So we have $1,500 minus 1,267.29. And the amount that we have left over is $232.71. So at this point, we're taking $1,267.29 and we're applying it to that invoice there. Of the $1,500 we paid, we have $232.71 left over. This payment didn't receive a discount because it's in the credit period for the first invoice. Now we can take a look at the second invoice and say, well, this is right on the end of the discount period for the second invoice. So what are we going to receive? Well, we take a look at the terms and there's 3%. So what's left over? We have 3%. This $232.71 is not going to completely cover the $841.74. So we're again doing a partial payment. Okay. So our partial payment, we say N is equal to L 1 minus D, and that says L is equal to N over 1 minus D. So the credit amount of our partial payment is our $232.71 over 1 minus 0.03. $239.90. So what's the outstanding balance? Well, when you take a look at this, we had a first invoice, which had a value, an amount of $1,267. We went on a time, we didn't receive any cash discount, we kept going in time, we got to this point and we said, we're gonna make a payment, and the first $1,267.29 had to go to pay that. The remaining $232.71 gives us a credit of $239.91. This invoice is $841. $841.74 invoice minus the $239.91 credit value that we get out of the partial payment. And so the amount left over $601.83. Okay, so the outstanding amount is $601.83. Right, that is cash discounts. It allows us to calculate how much money we owe in invoices, and also calculates how much it's going to cost us to encourage somebody to pay early. We will see you in the next chapter.